Hi, Martha. Looks like we're getting ready to get started. You're muted.
They haven't entered the room yet.
Oh, it's in person?
No.
Oh, the Zoom room.
Oh, excuse me, Karen. Karen? What item would you like to speak on? Excuse me, Karen, what item would you like to speak on?
Oh, I'm just signing in here. I'm just trying to figure out what I'm doing. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, so this is, the meeting hasn't started yet. You'll have to leave and come in, if you want to, join the meeting and make a comment.
Okay.
If not, then you will let me know which item you'd like to make a comment on, and I will let you, enter into the room.
Okay.
Okay, so which item would you like to comment on?
I'm not sure. Like I said, I'm new at this. I'm just trying to get.
All right, so if you could
Sorry.
please, if you could please leave the room.
Okay.
Thank you. Disconnect. Thank you.
Hey, Martha.
Hello, Pierre. How are you?
I'm good. Yourself?
Good, thank you.
Morning or evening.
Recording in progress.
There we are. All right. See, counting those is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're all here. Very good. Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. For the Special Joint City Council meeting of the American Canyon Fire Protection District Board for June 29, 2021. Have a flag, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Call, please.
Board Member Abudamos. Here. Board Member Oro.
Here.
Board Member Washington.
Here.
Vice Chair Joseph.
Here.
Chairman Garcia.
Here. Thank you all. Have the participation teleconferencing.
Yes, thank you for joining us for this June 29th, 2021 Fire Protection Board meeting, joint meeting. This meeting is being held entirely virtual in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The format tonight will be similar to that of an in-person fire district board meeting. In addition to the Zoom platform, the meeting is being broadcast on cable TV, channel 28 on YouTube, and streamed live on the city website. You will see the fire board members on your screen along with the members of the fire district staff. The agenda for this meeting is available on the City of American Canyons website. As in the standard practice, community members are allowed to comment one time on each agenda item. Members of the public may submit comments on the agenda prior to and during the meeting by email to mvanuelos@amcanfire.com. Your email should designate the agenda item number. Comments may also be submitted by phone during the agenda item by calling 707-647-5326. All votes at tonight's meeting will be taken by roll call. We ask your patience and understanding when there are technical difficulties. This concludes my introductory remarks.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, I should do the report upon return.
Yes, I was getting to that just now. Report on
Okay,
closed
thank you.
session, confirmation of reportable actions. Mr. Ross?
Mr. Chairman, board members, you convened an open session to address the matters agendized for closed session, 5:32. Was no public comment, so you adjourned at 5:32. You addressed all three matters. You concluded at 6:49 p.m. I'll do a written report upon return from closed session, consistent with the provisions of Government Code Section 54-957.1. That would conclude the report.
Thank you. Any questions from board members? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Ross. Moving on to city clerk's announcement pursuant to Government Code 54952.3. It is as stated in the agenda. Proclamations and presentations, there are none this evening. Have we had any public comment on items not on the agenda?
We had one from Jason Kishnev on cannabis.
Very much. Okay, any agenda changes, matters relating to American Canyon Fire Protection District Board?
Not at this time.
Not hearing none. Consent calendar. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar unless there is a need to pull an item for discussion?
I'll move the consent.
Second.
Motion second, roll call, please.
Board Member Abudamos. Board Member Oro.
Yes.
Board Member Washington.
Yes.
Vice Chair Joseph.
Yes.
Chairman Garcia.
Yes. Thank you, board. Moving on now to public hearings, American Canyon Fire Protection District preliminary budget fiscal year 2021-2022.
Thank you, Chairman Garcia and board members. I'm going to ask Ken Campo to kind of lead us through this presentation, and I'll be available to answer any questions you have specifically to the fire department issues.
Thank you, Chief. And I'll ask Martha if you will pull up the presentation. Here we are. So Chairman Garcia and members of the board, The item before you this evening is adoption of the preliminary budget for fiscal year 2021-22. I don't know why, but I'm just struggling with saying 21-22 for some reason. But just as a reminder, this is the preliminary budget, and we'll be back before you sometime in September to adopt the final budget, which is by state code is to be adopted by a final budget by October 1st. Now, just for the public, the board has in their packet and is available on the district's website the more detailed staff report and budget information to go along with this presentation. So with that, Martha, next slide. So this is just an overview of what we'll be discussing this evening. I have a monthly financial report to go over with the board through the month of May, which compares actual operating results with budget. And we'll take a more detailed look at the preliminary budget, including the general operating fund and the other major funds of the district. And we have some updated forecasts, and we'll take a look at the proposed capital spending for the district. So with that, we'll get into the monthly financial report. And so again, this is through the month of May. So this is through 11 months of fiscal year 2021. The first slide here is taking a look at the general fund reserve. So we're just focusing in on the general operating fund. The blue or the red brick across the bottom represents the district's contingency fund, which is equivalent to 20% of operating expenditures. The blue portion of the bar represents the operating reserves of the district. So the money needed to carry the district through the year, pay salaries and benefits throughout the year. And you can see each of these bars represents that balance at the end of each month. So you can see where it is through April at about $6.5 million. That's a little bit higher than last year's balance at this time of 6.4 million. The green line going across the top is the budgeted kind of reserve levels where we expected the district to be. So as you can see, the actual reserve number is in excess of where that green dot is for April. So the district's doing a little better than projected in terms of reserves. So next slide, Martha, is just the general fund cash of the district. Currently at 6.5 million, pretty much in line with the reserve number. And you can see it's again ahead of last year's balance at this point by 6.4 million. So the district is right where it should be in terms of its cash and reserves. Next slide. This is a look at the general fund expenditures. And you can see the current budget is the brown line, or the current year is the brown line, and the budget is, again, the green dash line. So the district is slightly under budget through May. And I apologize, I think the last slide was April, but this is actually through operating results through May. So this is overall general fund expenditures. And I should mention the budget line is based on the amended budget that the board approved. So it's through the mid-year review that we reviewed with the board not too long ago. So the next slide, please. So this is looking at salaries and benefits through May. So as you can see here, we're right on target with the amended budget. I'll just point out that last year is the blue line going across, and you can see That included strike team coverage, overtime costs related to strike team coverage, about $76,000 compared to this year, which is closer to $400,000. So again, we talked to the board about that fluctuation that we see from year to year in strike team activities. And here's a pretty good example of that. Next slide is looking at revenues through May. And again, we're right on target with the amended budget. And again, I'd point out that, last year we had about 132,000 of strike team reimbursement revenue to offset those costs. This year, it's almost $800,000. So again, pretty significant fluctuation in that strike team activity. The bottom line is the district is tracking right where it should be in terms of its operating revenues, expenses, cash, and reserve funds through the first through 11 months of this fiscal year. So there's no surprises there. So now we'll get into the proposed budget, the preliminary budget. Next slide, Martha. So we'll take a look at the general operating fund, and this is mainly for the public. General operating fund accounts for the core services the district provides, includes fire suppression, emergency medical services, urban search and rescue, mutual aid that we were just talking about, training activities, fire prevention, public education, apparatus and facilities maintenance, as well as the administration and board of directors. So all of these things are accounted for in the general operating fund. Next slide. So the other funds of the district, there's the fire mitigation fee fund. This fund accounts for the voter-approved special tax on development and funds specialized fire equipment, ensures at least one fire station in the northern portion of the district, and that all residents will be served by not less than 3 engines. And that's coming out of the text of the ordinance for the fire mitigation fee fund. And there's also the Fleet Facilities and Equipment Replacement Fund, which is the capital projects fund for the district. That fund is primarily funded by transfers coming out of the general operating fund, annual transfers, as well as funds from that fire mitigation fee fund to fund those activities mentioned above. This fund is used to maintain the district's significant investment in its capital infrastructure, to promote the safety of the community and the employees of the district, and to promote long-term stability by making sure we've got funds set aside for those essential capital projects and replacements. So preliminary budget guidelines. We always want to maintain the long-term fiscal sustainability of the district. We do that through identifying and addressing major unfunded liabilities, such as retirement and OPEB. And as I mentioned, trying to project the capital needs of the district in terms of apparatus, safety equipment, technology, facilities, making sure we have our arms around those costs, those significant costs going forward, and that we have a plan to pay for those, more importantly. And how we do that is through some financial planning tools that we use, long-range operational planning to try to understand the impacts, the long-term impacts of those decisions that the district is making today. And we use as I mentioned, a long-range financial forecast model for the general fund. And then we have a capital improvement plan that runs out for, up to 10 years, trying to anticipate those major capital expenditures facing the district in the future. Next slide. This is the kind of the overall overview of the district. So this is for all funds. Again, the focus for this upcoming year is that our operations are fiscally sustainable over the long haul, that we're meeting the safety needs of the community, and that the firefighters have the appropriate resources to work safely and effectively as they go about their day-to-day activities. And again, this is for all funds. We back out the transfers so that we're not doubling up on those transfer activities. Estimated actual results for fiscal 2021, we were just looking at that. Everything's on track in terms of the amended budget. We expect to end the year overall with 7.1 million of revenues and 7.3 million of expenditures. And that deficit of about $200,000 is actually related to capital expenditure. So we accumulate capital funds over time, and and those are expended as needed. So that's what's really driving that number. And we'll look a little closer at the general fund component of that. Next year, again, 6.4 million of revenues, 6.5 million of spending. It's a little less will be spent on capital next year. So this is just looking at the general operating fund. So again, we're looking at this current year revenues of about $6.7 million, $6,662,000 with expenses of $6,628,000. So a slight surplus of about $34,000. If you recall back to the preliminary budget and final budgets for 2021, this current fiscal year we're in, we were projecting, a fairly significant deficit. The strike team activity that we was talking about when we were looking at the budget to actual results, actually contributed about $400,000 of net revenue to the district, which pretty much wiped out that projected deficit for the year. So as the chief mentions from time to time, that has bought us some additional time going forward. And you see next fiscal year, the preliminary budget being proposed for 21-22 includes about $6.1 million in revenue and $6.5 million in spending at about a $400,000 deficit. That's related to the 6.0 staffing that we've been discussing over the last year and a half or so. And we'll get into a little more detail on that as we move forward and have more discussion. So general fund revenues of 6.1 million. The majority of that is coming from property taxes. That's where the district receives the bulk of its operating funds from property taxes. So 82% of those general fund revenues are comprised of property taxes. The fire assessment fee we included at about 666,000, but the action the board has taken to update that fee, it could be closer to $700,000. It's a little difficult to tell because these assessment fees are placed on the tax roll, and unlike property taxes, are not subject to the teeter plan where the county is advancing the money to the district. Fire assessment fee revenue is based on actual collection. So you may not always get the full amount that's put onto the tax roll. So that could potentially be closer to the $700,000 level. And all the other revenues that the district receives for service fees and charges amounts to about $417,000, about 7%. So you can see the bulk of the funding, 93% of the funding is property taxes and the fire assessment fee. So those are the two important revenue sources for the district. So this is just kind of a reminder about what transpired with the fire assessment fees and property tax revenues over the last 10 to 12 years. You can see during the recession, it from about 2009 to 2016, that kind of reflects what happened. to the district's property tax revenue during that recession. I like to show this chart because it shows you what happened. You know, the bulk of the drop in property tax revenues occurred in that first year from 2009 to 2010. And then it kind of bounced along the bottom there for a while before it started to grow again in 2014. So, and you can see that steady growth that's occurred in property tax revenue. That's what's really fueling the ability of the district to fund operations and move to this 6.0 staffing level. You know, that is about, so 21-22 will represent about the 8th consecutive year of property tax growth. And we'll get into the forecast a little later, but we're now starting to build in additional property tax revenue from the Watson Ranch projects. And that project is now underway. We feel a little more comfortable in bringing those revenues into the forecast. And we'll talk about that when we get to the forecast model. On the expenditure side of the general fund, again, 6.5 million is what's being proposed. The bulk of that is salaries and benefits at 86%. And I'll just remind the district, the board that the property tax revenue was about $5 million and the fire assessment fee was about $700,000. So those two items cover, you know, the salaries and benefits of the district. Services and supplies is another $764,000. We'll get into some more detail on that. And there's the annual transfer I was mentioning for the actual that capital set aside that goes over to that fleet facilities and equipment fund. That's proposed at $174,000 for this upcoming year. We bumped that number up about 3.5% for an inflationary adjustment. Again, what we're trying to do is accumulate these capital funds over in that fleet facilities and equipment fund to cover those capital costs when they come up in the future. So just looking a little closer at salaries and benefits, and again, as the chief mentioned previously, this level of salaries and benefits is intended to cover the current, maintain the current 6.0 staffing. And as what we've done is we've included 2 additional positions in this budget. So it would go from 18 firefighters. I should mention this covers the firefighters, the 2 assistant chiefs, and the 2 admin assistants for the district. In the past, we've included in order to provide the 6.0 staffing deployment model, where we have 6 firefighters on duty each shift to cover 2 engine companies. In the last year, we used overtime to cover that cost. Going forward, we've added in the budget 2 additional positions to help maintain that 6.0 staffing. And when we ran the numbers, it's really close, whether it's covered by overtime or covered by the additional staff. The benefit of the additional staff, of course, is it gives your firefighters a break. They're not being mandated to work or held over on shifts as often if you have, you know, the additional staffing. So I'll let the chief speak to the benefits of that, but I think there are definitely benefits. And Chief, I don't know if you want to weigh in now on that topic or you want to wait till discussion after the presentation.
I think if I could, I'll leave that to the end of the presentation, and we can talk about that when the board
Yes, sir.
has specific questions.
Yes, sir. Then we'll forge on. So again, salaries and benefits, 5.6 million. That's up about $300,000 from the previous year. But you have to remember we had those about almost $400,000 of strike team related costs in last year's numbers. Salaries, about $2.6 million of that 5.6. Overtime is $350,000. So we backed out, that's about $300,000 less than what we spent the previous year. And there's, we haven't made any assumptions about additional strike team deployments in that number. Typically what we do is we make that adjustment at mid-year when we are pretty much know what that number is going to be on both the expense side and the revenue side. Retirement costs, net of the cost share that the employees are picking up a portion of the district's retirement contributions. That's projected at about $1 million, so that's up about $170,000. Again, that's kind of related to these additional positions and some PERS rate increases. Active medical is going to be about, so that's medical for current employees, projected at about $400,000. Retiree medical, money going to pay for retiree medical benefits, and the additional contribution toward the unfunded liability. So those two components are projected at $425,000, pretty much flat with the current year, and that's coming out of the actuarial report that the district has to determine the funding for those retiree medical benefits. And we're projecting workers' compensation costs, insurance premium of about $288,000. The next slide is looking a little closer at services and supplies. Again, the overall budget is about $764,000, which is roughly about $50,000 less than what's projected for the 2021 year. And that's primarily in the area of professional services. Legal and professional services are proposed at $248,000, pretty much consistent with 2021. NAPA JPA is projected at or budgeted at $10,000. This is quite a drop from the previous year, and this has to do with the fact the district is no longer using City of Napa Fire Department for fire prevention services, which is now reflected in the legal and professional services category. Dispatch services, $74,000, I think is consistent with the current year. IT support services at $45,000. Property tax administration fee paid to Napa County is projected at $51,000. And then about $15,000 for some is the budget for mandated safety equipment. The district always usually budgets around that level for safety equipment. Not always, we don't always use the entire budget, but we have that money available to expend for safety equipment. This is the forecast that we've shared with the board previously. The green bars represent the projected ending fund balance at the end of each fiscal year. So this would be June 30 of each year. The brick across the bottom, again, represents the district's reserve policy for a rainy day reserve, if you will, or a contingency reserve, equivalent to 20% of ongoing general fund expenditures. That reserve fund can only be used with formal board action. So before dropping below that level, it would have to go back to the board. The kind of the blue wavy area, again, is the operating reserve, or what we call the dry period funding. That is set at 50% of general fund revenues. And as I mentioned, the district gets most of its operating money from property taxes. And those taxes come in April and December. So that's a long time in between that the district needs these reserves, these funds on hand to cover, salaries and benefits and other operating expenses throughout the year. So that 50% of ongoing general fund revenues is kind of just a measure that we use. If we feel comfortable, if we have that amount of money on hand at the end of the year, that would be sufficient to carry us through to the next property tax payment in December. Now, why 50%? I mean, it's a good number to use. It could probably be less than that, but if we have that amount of funds on hand, we're pretty confident that we can cover all the monthly ongoing expenses. And you can see in this forecast, we start dipping below that level, starting in, we're right at that level in fiscal 23-24. Then it drops a little below that blue area and then starts climbing back up again. And the reason for that is the Watson Ranch development and the projected property tax revenue and fire assessment fees coming from that development. We have that beginning in fiscal year 23-24. That was based on the most recent information that we received from the city and the city's planning department or planning folks as to when, if they've started construction now, we're looking at when those units come online and when they're going to start selling those, and then roughly 12 months later, you start seeing the property tax revenue coming in. So that's why you see that balance start building up again over time. You can see those lines going across the top. The orange line represents expenses. The blue line represents the revenue. So you can see about 25, 26, it's pretty much break even and then starts climbing after that. And what's built in, and Martha, if you click one more time, I think, yeah, there you go. So that green arrow shows up. So that's when we start projecting Watson Ranch revenue coming in. And of course, all those units aren't going to come online at the same time. So we're using the phasing information that the developer has provided on when those units would become, when each phase would come online. So we're building that over time. It starts compounding as you get a little further out in the forecast. And this expenditure includes the 2 additional firefighter positions starting in 21-22, and then adds 1 more firefighter in 22-23, so that there would be 3 over the 18 required for the 6.0 staff. I think that ultimately that's where the district would like to end up, but we're bringing those additional firefighters on, again, 2 next fiscal year and then 1 the following fiscal year. Next slide, Martha. This is where we look at the fire mitigation fee fund. We're projecting revenues of $219,000. The special mitigation tax, $211,000. That's just representative of a 5-year rolling average of collections for that tax. I would expect that to go up even further as the Watson Ranch development really starts moving along. So we should see hopefully more of that mitigation tax revenue coming in. And then some small amount of interest earnings. There's no transfers being proposed for fiscal 21-22. As I mentioned, we had a lot of capital expenditures last year, but we're not projecting much in the way of capital spending next year. So there's no transfer out of this fund required to fund those capital expenditures. We're projecting an ending balance here of about $1.2 million to get to the end of next fiscal year. Next slide. Fleet Facilities and Equipment Fund. Revenues of $225,000 consist of that general fund transfer of $174,000. The Napa Logistics Park contribution to the district, $50,000. And just as a reminder to the board, that was $50,000 a year for 10 years, I believe. And we're about halfway through that at this point. But that's $50,000 a year going in to assist with capital, to assist with the capital needs of the district. And then a small amount of, again, of some interest earnings. The proposed spending for next year out of this capital fund is $178,000. Last year was well over $700,000, closer to $800,000 or $900,000. And that's because we had some grant funding for some capital expenditures. But the proposal is $85,000 in fleet. I think that's for a new a replacement command vehicle. And then equipment, safety equipment at $91,000 and just a couple of $1,000s, I think, for the James Road facility, if I'm not mistaken. The projected ending balance in this fund is about $57,000. We don't try and have too much money here because we have that money sitting over in the fire mitigation fee fund, but we do have our annual contribution from the general fund that does accumulate over time. And that's my brief presentation of the preliminary budget. The recommendation would be to hold the public hearing and approve the resolution adopting the preliminary budget. And now I'll turn it over to the chief for any additional comments that he'd like to make.
Thanks, Ken. A great presentation as usual. I think what I'll do is ask through the chair if there are specific questions of both Ken or I to help clarify any issues you might have with what's being proposed.
Any questions from the board? Hand up.
Yes, number one, I appreciate the presentation, very clear and kind of provide good data without too much data. The two concerns I have is looking at the long-term forecast. The obvious concern is when the green bars start dropping below the operating reserve. So the first question relates to, how are we handling that? Because theoretically, that means we may run into a situation where we're short on cash as we get into November and so forth. Is that how, am I reading it correctly? And what do we got planned to avert that?
Yes, sir. That occurs would be in the fiscal 24-25 timeframe. So I think we have time between now and then to adjust if necessary.
Okay.
Again, the operating reserve of 50% of projected revenues is probably a little higher than what's actually needed. So there's some cushion there. And I think we have time to adjust as we get in through next fiscal year and into the following fiscal year. And then see how things line up at that point. And again, this is kind of dependent on the Watson Ranch development and how quickly that project proceeds. And so I think by the end of next fiscal year, we'll know a lot more about that project and how it's going.
The other question is more of a comment on securing the extra staffing that we all want. In the past, we've gotten, I think it's firefighter assistance grants or something that, you get it, you have to pay for it eventually, but it kind of gives you a couple of years of free money. And then if there's anything that the state's doing with wildfire prevention or that area, are we kind of exploring those as funding sources to help us either cover the cost ongoing or at least give us a couple of years break of one-time monies?
The answer to that is yes on all counts. We're seriously going to be looking at a safer grant for next year and see if we can't pick up that third body.
Okay.
And we'll be looking for other options, financial revenue options that would help us do that sooner versus later.
Good. Okay.
The California Special Districts Association has been actively lobbying the governor to sign a bill that was passed by the legislature that would provide additional funding to fire districts related to COVID-related activities. And so we're hoping the governor signs that bill, and that could provide some additional funding for the fire district as well.
Similar, that would be similar to what the city got in their COVID. I mean, not the number won't look the same, but essentially it's the same type of reimbursement for expenses associated with that. We're actually looking at, given the fact that we did the 6.0 staffing and you made that decision to split our companies and move, all that money looks like is potentially reimbursable by if the governor signs this. So hopefully, if he does, I'll be coming back to you with that, and we can talk about how we're going to put that into our budget.
If nothing else, that kind of changes that whole 10-year forecast right off the bat.
Yeah, you're right, Mark. It's kind of like this. I mean, I don't want to bank on the strike team revenue that was generated last year, but that in itself kind of paints that picture and tells you that, there's risk associated with what you're doing tonight, but it's way less than it was last year when you made that decision.
And as Ken points out, there is some time here. So as we monitor and review, we're in a position to make adjustments rather than to just wake up one day and say, oh gosh. So
Yes.
I appreciate what you're doing.
And what I presented to the board with respect to the year-to-date activity through May, that information is provided to the fire chief and on a monthly basis. So we're looking very closely at that every month throughout the year.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, we should monitor that governor's response to that legislative action. That would be very helpful. It would appear we're in good stead. Any other questions from the board before we open the public hearing? Seeing none, public hearing on this matter at this time. Have we received any public comment on this matter?
No, we have not, Chairman.
Well, I'll give it a moment. Again, we'll say the public hearing is open on this matter at this time. Anybody out there who's watching the broadcast, please contact. Hearing none, we'll close public matter on this matter. Return to the board or further discussion and or desired action.
There's no further discussion. I will make a motion to adopt resolution number 2021-14, a resolution of the American Canyon Fire Protection District, a subsidiary special district of the City of American Canyon, adopting the 2021 meeting. I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong one. Duh.
Yeah.
My apologies.
That's okay. Keep going.
Yeah. One agenda ahead.
That's another one, yes.
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution 2021/-13, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the American Canyon Fire Protection District adopting the preliminary budget for fiscal year 2021-2022.
I'll second.
Motion second, roll call, please.
Board Member Abudamos.
Yes.
Board Member Oro.
Yes.
Board Member Washington.
Yes.
And Vice Chair Joseph.
Yes.
And Chairman Garcia.
Yes, thank you, board. Good. We're in a good position here. And of course, it always requires close monitoring.
Yes.
Moving on to our agenda, it would be the next item is updates on the American Canyon Fire Protection District Board of Directors meeting dates.
Thank you, Chairman Garcia and board members. As you know, I've been lobbying you all to move towards the possibility of meeting separately from the city council as the fire district board once a month, which is very similar to what most of our other fire district neighbors are doing. In fact, almost all of them are. And but because we're a subsidiary district, we have been functioning as if we're commingling our meetings. I'd like to see us move towards a once a month schedule. I'm proposing that be done on the second Tuesday of the month, which would be, you meet as a city council the 1st and the 3rd. And currently you meet as the fire district on the 5th when it actually happens. I'm proposing we do it on the second Tuesday of the month. I know that Vice Chair Joseph has a conflict with that, and I'm open to taking the 4th Tuesday of the month before you just tell me no way. So I'll open it up for questions, but this is I think it would be a major benefit to the staff and to the board, frankly, and to kind of keeping the fire district focus that you and I have talked about over the course of the last several months. And I think this would be a big move in that direction.
I think with the anticipated changes we're having with the fire district, it would be advisable to meet monthly. Give it a try. That's what I'd say. Certainly, I would certainly be sensitive to Vice Chair Joseph conflict. Certainly, we all are very busy out there in the community, and I think 4th Tuesday might work. I think I do have a conflict on the 4th Tuesdays, depending on what time we start. Mine is starts around 5:30 and the 5:15 goes to around 7 or so. So I don't know how we resolve this. Toss a coin, rock, scissors, paper. I don't know. Is that-
And on my, Mr. Mayor, on my conflict, my meeting starts at 7. So if we actually met earlier, it's the same kind of, I think we can, well, I guess I would start off by saying, I think meeting once a month is a good idea. And the issue is, can you figure out a date and time that fits for all of us? And that may be a question of when do these meetings start and or how long can they go? But if you can work those logistics out, at least for me, you've got a deal.
I think the agenda item certainly is not as extensive as it is with the city. So, but thank you for that comment. Director Oro.
Yeah, I'm fine with meeting once a month as long as it's on a Tuesday. So pick a Tuesday, do that Tuesday. And I'm also going to request, I know that there's 3 other members of this board that have other day jobs that are during normal business hours.
Yeah.
Well, and I cannot meet earlier. It's a stretch to even meet earlier for a 4:30 meeting. 5:30 is, I'm coming crashing into this meeting. So from the rest of the day. So I just can't do that. And I would discourage you looking for another date because the Tuesdays have been blocked out, at least as a rhythm, as a flow for a lot of the audience too, and just particularly for me. Just go ahead and block out every Tuesday dedicated to city or fire district matters.
So by getting it, you're agreeable if it's on a Tuesday? Did I hear that right?
Yep.
Okay. Director Abadalos.
I'm going to echo what Director Oro just said. Tuesday is the day that I work from home, so 5:30 on a Tuesday is the best that I can do. I can't do earlier than that, and then the rest of the week I work all the way out in Oakland, so it's going to be very difficult to be here by 5:30.
Director Washington.
Yeah, I'm fine with either one, whichever works best. I believe that we owe it to the chief to give him a dedicated day that we just focus on fire issues. I think it's really important that we do that. So whatever works for the group is fine with me. But I agree, 5:30 would be a good start time for me as well.
5:30 would work for me on Tuesdays. What are we looking at, first and fourth?
Or
First is our council. That would be
second or fourth?
Second or fourth.
Chair, your commitment on the 4th starts at 7 or ends at 7?
It'd be a fourth Monday.
Oh,
Or see, the Tuesday's not the problem, it's the Monday.
oh,
No.
oh. Well, then if that's the case, if we could move it to the 4th Tuesday, you could, then I'm okay with that, and I don't
No
have a
problem.
problem on the 2nd. I have a problem on the 2nd Tuesday.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, fourth Tuesday is clear for me.
oh, okay.
So then, Chief, just a point of clarification, would we cancel the 5th Tuesday or would we be meeting the 4th and 5th?
We would cancel the 5th Tuesday and we would meet consistently on the 4th Tuesday of every month.
That works for me.
And we would meet at, I mean, if it 6:30, whatever works for you, 7 o'clock. If 5:30 is too early, 6 o'clock. I mean, I'm open to what would be.
If we meet at 5:30, it works for me.
Yeah, it's 5:30 is okay.
That works for me.
Any earlier than
Okay,
that.
that's
Show
great.
hands. 5:30, show hands.
If I can make a comment, I mean, we could say that the meeting starts at 6 or 6:30. If for some reason we need a closed session, that could start as early as 5:30, but wouldn't always be the case.
Well, I'm thinking just start at 5:30 and if there's a closed session that precedes the rest of the meeting.
Well, we can't get any earlier than 5:30. That's what I'm saying.
Well, that's right. No,
If
just
the
start at
open
5:30.
session was at 6 or 6:30, that would either give everybody a break and they don't have to get here as early, or if there was closed session, we could get here at 5:30 and deal with it.
If I could,
Well, David, was that you that mentioned the flow earlier? I think just for the sake of the flow, we should stick with 6:30 meetings and 5:30 closed session.
5:30 close, 6:30. We're complicating it now. Just 5:30 close,
Oh.
30 regular. Yeah.
All right.
Works for me.
Chairman Garcia, if I could just make one editorial comment.
Certainly.
My experience has been in other fire districts when I've done this, our meetings are not city council meetings.
No.
They do not last as long as council
Yes.
meetings.
Great.
And so you'll notice that your evening will be reasonably short, but we'll deal with business. And I, in the fact, have had, closed session, we would schedule the meeting for 7 o'clock because people were working and needed to get home and get some dinner or whatever. And we'd go into closed session for the first 30 minutes or whatever, and Bill might back me up on this, and then come out of closed session and go into the scheduled meeting. So it's a different breed of cat than what you're used to dealing with the city council.
I would expect to be a lot shorter meeting. Yes.
Yes. So I'm great with the 5:30 closed session and 6:30. Let's keep it consistent with that. That's
Okay.
perfect.
Thank you.
Stay focused on business and get done earlier. Yeah.
Less time to remember.
Well, we're almost done and it's not even 8 as a point.
Thank you all for this. I can't tell you how much I appreciate the fact that we're making this move.
Yeah.
This is great.
So do we have to have public comment on this, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Sure.
It's an open item. So we're agreed on that. Did you have any further, Director Alvarez, your hands up?
Oh, sorry, it never came back down. Nope.
Yeah.
Any public comment received on this matter?
No, Chairman Garcia.
Thank you very much. We'll close public comment.
I
Richard?
will.
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion that I was making earlier, resolution, make a motion to move, adopt resolution number 2021-14, resolution of the American Canyon Fire Protection District, a subsidiary special district, the City of American Canyon adopting the 2021 meeting date for the American Canyon Fire District Board of Directors, as I'm just going to say it out loud, I'm not sure it's in here, the fourth Tuesday of the month.
I'll second.
Motion and second, roll call, please.
Board Member Abu-Damas? Board Member Oro?
Yes, and I'm hoping this resolution will be amended to put the correct dates. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was what I was going to ask for.
Board Member Washington?
Yes.
Vice Chair Joseph?
Yes.
Chairman Garcia?
Yes.
Right.
Very good. Ready to move on to our next item?
I
No,
guess
thank
related,
you.
yeah,
Mr. Mayor, this is a consent item for the city,
Mhm.
and it merely confirms action that your council took back in December. And it's substituting DR Horton Bay Inc. for lots 14 and 15 of the Watson Ranch Pacific Plan. It's a consent item. You've already approved the form of the development agreement assignment. It simply substitutes the financial recommendation with respect to DR Horton Bay Inc. for Lennar, which was previously the entity for development.
That's the only change.
That's the only change.
Yeah.
And it's, the reason it's on tonight is because the closing date for that sale, which will increase the roll value for Watson Ranch, it's not new construction, is projected for next week on the 8th. So it was added on to the fire district agenda to meet that deadline for the projected closing, which became evident about 10 days ago now. Much more accelerated than originally contemplated.
that will help the fire district pay its bills. So
Yes, it will.
if there's no other discussion, I'd make a motion, we approve the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Motion and second, roll call, please.
Councilmember Abu-Damas?
Yes.
Councilmember Oro?
Muted.
Councilmember Washington?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Joseph?
Yes.
Mayor Garcia?
Yes. Thank you, board. Rest of these matters are maybe related to American Canyon City Council. If I got that correct. Mayor, council comments, committee reports, future agenda items. Take that up for, I'm assuming, board of directors, if we modified that, but any future agenda items. If not, then we have concluded our business for the evening. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Happy 4th of July, everybody.
Happy 4th. Good night, American Canyon.
Night.
Night.
May the fourth be with you.